Who stood out the most during week 2 of OTAs for the New Orleans Saints? Ladies and gentlemen, the backdrop, New Orleans football. Mike Triplet in the some kind of warehouse or something. Who the hell even knows where he is? Someone go find this guy. Get him some wallpaper. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So we are here after another week of Saints OTAs. This week seems to be the week where Tyler Shough did his thing. I've been hearing a lot about Tyler Shough's performance, so I'm interested to hear what Mike has to say. Let's go ahead and react, shall we?
In the second OTA availability.
Well, it's funny. I had written the script for today's show and suggested let's call it the non-quarterback edition, because every episode seems to be about the quarterbacks. Every discussion is about the quarterbacks. But we got to talk about the quarterbacks, especially.
Yeah, I mean, look. Yeah, like the idea of let's talk about something else. Like, what are you born yesterday? This is the most important position. This is the most. Don't look at me like that, Brandon. Jesus. This is the most important position in the game, the most important position in the sport, and the most exciting competition the Saints have had maybe ever. I think it's pretty easy to say that. But, of course, it's going to dominate the headlines, and it should dominate the headlines. That's what people want to know about. And right now, where we are in OTAs, there is no contact. The offensive line is doing nothing. The defensive line is doing nothing. There's no pads. Some of the veterans aren't there. So it's all you can really see are the quarterbacks spinning the pill and then wide receivers making catches. But that's it.
Especially if anyone saw the highlights from yesterday's practice. We weren't able to video everything they did on 7-on-7s, but I saw the Saints put that throw out, Tyler Shough, 60 yards to Bub Means. I mean, that's the highlight of practice. That's one of those plays that, is going to be a Tyler Shough highlight anytime we talk about him or anybody talks about him on TV or, there's a preview. They're going to be like, oh, how about let's throw that 60-yard touchdown pass that the Saints put out on their highlight reel. It was a great throw, great catch from Bub Means. We'll talk about him in a little bit later segment. He also hit Donovan Peoples-Jones deep down the sideline. Showing off that big play. Spencer Rattler had some highlights, hit both Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave in different moments. Look, they didn't, I don't think, raise their standing or lower their standing from what we've been talking about, but they continue to have their moments in practice.
I keep seeing this in the comments where it's like, well, yeah, Tyler Shough had a good throw, but what about Rattler? Or, yeah, well, Rattler did this, but what about Shough? It's like, guys, we're just kind of covering the back and forth. Like, this is a positive. It's okay if Spencer Rattler gets some shine. It's okay if Tyler Shough gets some shine. It's like a tennis match where they're just returning serve, and this one hits it, and then this one returns it, and this one returns it. The real winners here are the New Orleans Saints.
I can't wait till the stakes get higher. Hopefully during minicamp, maybe we see 11-on-11. Maybe we see 2-minute drill. Maybe we see
that 100%. Like, that is where things are going to get really interesting when it's like, all right, Spencer, your team's in the 2-minute drill. All right, Tyler, your team's in the 2-minute drill. Let's see what happens with the pads on, with all that stuff happening.
The situations,
or even preseason. Like, preseason will be interesting. The first, I never go to preseason games. This year, I'll be at every one that I can go to, because it's like, if the first half is Tyler Shough and the second half is Spencer Rattler, or vice versa, those two halves are like Super Bowls for those guys. Every play is so important. It's so, like, I'll give you a little pro tip here, but bet the New Orleans Saints this year in preseason, because they're going to care the most about the game. Preseason is all about motivation. If you have quarterbacks especially who are really motivated to play well in the preseason, that's all you can ask for. So bet the Saints in the first half, first quarter, and full game of every preseason game.
Red zone, things like that. We'll definitely see that in training camp and then the preseason games. But non-quarterback, what stood out to me and continues to stand out to me is these defensive ends. And look, we are going to make too big of a deal out of the switch from a 4-3 to a 3-4. We probably already have. When they're in nickel and dime, you probably won't even be able to tell how it looks different. But when you can tell how it looks different is when you're watching practices with 7-on-7 drills, because it is different to see Cam Jordan and Carl Granderson and Chase Young in 7-on-7 drills. Normally, they walk.
Yeah, I mean, remember, a lot of these edge rushers are being asked to play in the 7-on-7 because they do have to drop back in coverage a lot more, obviously. I'm not splitting the atom here, but yeah, so that is different. And another thing that's interesting when people are like, well, the defense has been bad the last couple of years. It's like, yeah, did you notice that it's a completely new scheme? It's a completely new system, which is why it's so exciting. All of the stuff that you can point to the last couple of years, all of the problems with the Saints, they are at least attempting to fix those problems. They are at least attempting to fix the defense, fix the offensive line, fix the quarterback play, fix the play calling, whatever you want to label it. So that's the part where I keep stressing this experimentation phase is fun for a fan, because whether it works or not, like, they're attempting to fix it, and we can see how it plays out.
Off to the side with the defensive line during those drills, and now there they are out there dropping back in coverage, simulating some pass rush. And look, I talked to Carl Granderson about it yesterday. He said, of course we worked on coverage and we had coverage assignments in the past. And Kellen Moore said, these guys are going to be pass rushers first and foremost. That is the number one priority.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're going to be playing safety. They're not going to be all of a sudden like, all right, well, 60% of the time you're in coverage. They're not going to do that.
We're not taking anything away from that.
Yeah.
But it's nice to be multiple and versatile. And there will be times when our ends drop back in coverage so Demario Davis and Pete Werner can blitz. And I just, frankly, these defensive ends, anything that's different is probably good for them. Each one of them. Cam Jordan talked about hating being stuck on the inside.
Yeah, Cam Jordan was the guy last year when we tried that like Lamborghini package where they had all the pass rushers and Cam would play basically defensive tackle, and he hated it. It was something he did not want to do. So this is a far cry from that. All of a sudden he went from playing defensive tackle basically to playing outside linebacker.
Especially when he thought the scheme was basic under defensive line coach Todd Grantham for the first half of last season. Chase Young has been waiting forever to fully tap into his potential. I talked to Granderson. He said he dropped down from 285 back to 275 this offseason.
Okay.
Because he thought.
Yeah, obviously you're going to have to try and slim down because you're being asked to do more against a different skill set.
He didn't quite have as much motor last year as he had the last couple of years, which were some of the best seasons of his career. Isaiah Foskey obviously needs anything to shake it up. So doing something new and different, I'm excited to watch these guys develop because that position group is fascinating. We could call it maybe the biggest weakness or the biggest concern spot on the team. But
I think interior defensive line is definitely what I would consider the weakest position group on the team.
There's a bunch of guys there that, Chase Young in particular, I mean, could he become the defensive MVP if it ever locks together? Like, I mean, who knows? He is such a pivot point for this team that I like.
Chase Young is such an interesting case study because he has been good. We had a chart a couple weeks ago or maybe last week that had win rate from edge rushers, and Chase Young was like 9th in the NFL. He is, no doubt about it, he is playing well. And certainly for his price point and all that stuff, you're not going to say he's the defensive player of the year or anything like that, but he is like Pro Bowl level, but he is playing good, certainly good, baseline good. But if he does take that step to where some of that good turns to great, Chase Young is 25 years old. We know the talent's there. Former second overall pick. For what the Saints are paying him on this deal, if he can take that step and become great, this dead defensive line looks completely different.
I like watching those guys be doing anything new and different.
Yeah, no, for sure. We'll talk more about them in a little while, but you just pinning in on that Chase Young point. You paid him, and he was able to play the entire season last year. So replicate that again.
The whole offseason is even. Yeah, remember this time last year he was on the shelf. Yeah,
he had neck surgery. People, which was never a huge concern. He stressed that, but yeah, I mean, he played a whole season healthy. Is healthy right now. Looks good in OTA. So it sounds like we can put that behind him.
Yeah. So let's see what he can maximize into. But just. You covered pretty much all the base points of the OTA practice, but just honing in on some other things. It seemed like Rattler and Shuck both were just picking at certain people on the defense. And one of those people in particular, Rajon Wright, who was in coverage on some of those bomb plays, made up for it later down the line with an interception. So that was pretty huge for him just to see his recovery after getting beat down on. But also inside of the individual drills, you just get to see Kendre Miller, and you get to see that explosiveness and that speed. And you're like, if all of this can come together, this can be something. But we've been saying that for the last 2 years, but it just seems more encouraging now with the complete blank slate. building up from the ground up just to see how all of that comes together. And also back with the offensive line, not too much to really say about the configuration. It was the same thing that we've.
I mean, that's going to be another battle. Like right now, you can't tell anything, and you won't be able to know until preseason, really. But the Devin Neal versus Kendra Miller, who will be the backup running back? Who will be the guy who does take most of those carries off of Alvin Kamara? I've said this before, and people get mad when I say this, but it really doesn't matter, like whether it's Kendra Miller or Devin Neal, unless you have I actually have a Devin Neal. Let me see if I can find it. I was looking through my. Oh, there it is. I was looking through my Bowman Chrome cards. As if you've been watching the channel, you know I've been in a trading card era. I may start doing some pack openings or something on stream or on the channel. Not this channel, but on my second channel. But Devin Neal, boom. Yeah, Devin Neal Chrome card. So, it'd be good for me if Devin Neal takes off and all of a sudden he's a superstar. But if you don't know, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we're kind of the Skrmetta verse is vast. We know that. We have different channels. We have a gaming channel, wrestling channel, and what was my podcast channel is now going to be what I'm calling James Skrmetta Plus, which is just a second channel where I'm going to put all kind of stuff over there. Anything that's not directly related to sports or the NFL or stuff you find here will be over there. And I've been thinking about doing some like pack openings, like getting sports cards, doing the opening, stuff like that for fun, but whatever. But so those are like the main ways you can find my content is this channel, and the podcast will be on this channel, by the way. So it won't be on its separate thing. It will be on like Spotify and all that. But yeah, this channel, James Skrmetta Wrestling, James Skrmetta Gaming, and then James Skrmetta Plus, the newly named James Skrmetta Plus. All right, a sidebar from all that, but people get mad when I say this, but whether it's Kendra Miller or Devin Neal, who really cares? The important thing is how good can Alvin Kamara be? If we are relying on Kendra Miller or Devin Neal or Jordan Mims or Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Pierre Thomas or Chris Ivory or whoever, bad news bears, right? We need Alvin Kamara to be the guy. We need him to be the guy. So yeah, it's cool to have your spell halfback or your third string or whatever, but similar to last year where when Kamara's down, I don't really care what combination it was, you're kind of cooked, so same here. I care way less about the Devin Neal Kendra Miller battle. I care way more. I'm having a stroke or something. I care way more about how good Alvin Kamara is for the season.
We've already been seeing, but they used a different kind of method with some resistance bands connected to the wall to, I guess, assist in getting in your drop quicker or something like that.
Oh, by the way, if you're thinking about betting Devin Neal for Rookie of the Year, you got to factor in the volume. Like he can't get the volume to be Rookie of the Year unless Alvin Kamara is injured. And if you're betting on Alvin Kamara to be injured, it seems like kind of a weird bet. So I would not bet on Devin Neal to be Rookie of the Year.
To help just hone in on the small things, they had resistance bands around their waist and around their exterior foot. So we'll see what kind of that translates into.
What are we talking about?
I think Nick had asked Kellen Moore about it in the press conference yesterday, and he was just like, hey.
Yeah, he laughed at how Brendan Nugent's so creative working with those guys. Yeah, and it's probably notable that they didn't change anything. Look, we saw changes with the backup line, and they're going to do shuffling. So anytime they're not doing shuffling on the offensive line, it's like, all right, even more evidence that this is their lineup.
I think it's pretty much done, unless something happens to where they're horrible whenever the pads come on. But I think you can pretty much guarantee Banks left tackle, Penning guard, McCoy center, Ruiz right guard, Fuaga right tackle. Which
is something we were curious about. If it would have been the story of the day if, like, all of a sudden Fuaga is playing left tackle and Trevor Planning's playing right tackle, but they all stayed in their positions. Yeah, I mean that group could be the strength of the team, as we talked about earlier this week. The development of the young guys on the offensive line is as important as anything this offseason. And look, that Rajon Wright interception was a great play by Rajon Wright. It was a bad throw by Tyler Shuck. We obviously have to mention the lows too when we're talking about those guys. In 2 OTAs, that's the first interception we saw from either one, and he held onto the ball too long. He was late delivering the throw. So it's not going to be perfect, and we're going to see highs and lows for sure. Another guy who stood out to me was Danny Stutzman.
Animal. Man, I wish I had some Danny Stutzman cards Maybe I need to see. Maybe I need to open up another pack on the channel. But yeah, Stutzman I think is just going to be he's so awesome. He's such a good steal as far as like a prospect. RAS score out of control. Proved he could do it at a big time school. Was super productive at Oklahoma. I mean, just I wears a cowboy collar. I mean, what a guy. So yeah, I think Danny Stutzman will be insane.
Got a lot of run with the first team. Now at the beginning, it was DeMarco Jackson next to Pete Werner, Nephi Sewell next to Pete Werner, which is also what we saw last week. Since Demario Davis wasn't in either of the sessions we saw, although he's been here this week. Yeah. But after Nephi Sewell got that first session, it was Stutzman the rest of the practice, including all that 11-on-11 walkthrough he did. He ran down the field, covering Cedric Wilson about 30 yards down the field, and helped break up a pass, even though it was a good throw by Shuck and maybe could have been caught. Great throw by Shuck. But Stutzman, I don't think he gets a chance as long as Demario Davis and Pete Werner are healthy. But early on, I mean, the run he's getting early on, and Nick had been telling me, been hearing good things about him from people who have watched all of the OTAs and everything.
One thing I can promise you about Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley is that they will put the best players on the field. So if Danny Stutzman is playing that well, they will find a way to get him on the field.
Everything like that. So they might have found one on day 3, and who has a chance to emerge as a number 3 linebacker who rotates into the mix. And obviously, the most important is what his future looks like.
Yeah, for sure, no question about it. Another thing, just talking about, these are rookies. You know what I mean? Some of these players are rookies in their first time being in this kind of environment. Going back to the running backs, there was a drill that they were doing. Joe Thomas, he's back in action down here after a year in New York. And just seeing Devin Neal, it was some drill just coming off the ball. Maybe it wasn't as fluid. I saw in the clip we posted yesterday, I saw some people pointing that out. But in terms of just drill work, he continuously looked pretty well, looked pretty good. Just he's a rookie, you know what I mean? So there's certain things that they have to come up to speed with, a lot of things processing at one time. But just kind of honing in back on Kendre Miller, I think that if this all comes together and he, takes advantage of these opportunities, if that offensive line is clicking, then man, the running back room can be another bright spot on.
It has to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think you kind of stop this conversation at Alvin Kamara. If the offensive line is that good, and you know what Kellen Moore wants to do, what can we expect out of Kamara? And how good can he be this year? Said before, keep your eyes out for the Alvin Kamara total season rushing yard number, because if they drop another like 800 yard, 750, 800, whatever, last year was 650, which he went over no problem. We gave it out on the channel. A lot of people cashed tickets, but I think Alvin Kamara will go over 1,000 yards this year. I think he's going to have a hell of a year barring injury, but yeah, I mean, everything is set up for him to be really, really, really good this year.
Has to be. And look, we're not going to see Alvin Kamara in these OTAs. We probably won't see him till mandatory minicamp. That's how he's always done things, and it hasn't held him back. So good for him living his life and showing up. And never leaving any doubt about what he's been doing behind the scenes. But man, I mean, if this offensive line lives up to its potential, then Alvin Kamara has a chance to have the best season he's had in years, and certainly those young guys, Kendre.
I mean, even like touchdowns, like if you think about Alvin Kamara, he won't have Taysom to vulture those touchdowns, so even his touchdowns number could be super high. We don't really talk fantasy sports here, but Alvin Kamara in fantasy could be a great pick as a running back.
Neal. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's in this mix. I liked him in that drill that you posted.
I liked him last year. I thought he ran well. Like a lot of people were all over Kendre Miller last year, but I thought CEH ran really hard, really well for the Saints.
Stop talking about him too. A lot of opportunity for all those guys with Jamal Williams now.
Wouldn't be surprised at all if we ended up with Alvin Kamara as the 1, Devin Neal as the 2, and then CEH as the 3.
Not being here anymore.
Yeah, and with that group clicking, the quarterbacks, their job just becomes that much easier. It can be an entire helping system for each other. But going back to the defensive line, you kind of spoke on it earlier about how several different players are in different spots this year in terms of what their responsibilities will be and what they will be asked to do. So let's kind of go through and just guess at which defensive linemen make the 53-man roster, because
It's crazy.
it is piled up in there, man.
Well, and I could have named
A lot of people. I mean, they're taking the Philadelphia Eagles approach, which is get a bunch of them and let it play out, right? If you have 8 people rotating and 4 of them separate themselves, cool. Fine. That's a better situation than, well, you only have 4, so you got to play them no matter what.
Jonah Williams. He's another guy that stood out to me yesterday just because of the way they've been using him in the first 2 OTAs. Now, we haven't seen Nathan Shepard at any OTAs yet. We saw Brzee and Godshaw last time, or we haven't seen Godshaw yet?
I don't think we've seen Godshaw yet.
All right. So we haven't seen how the rotational look if every defensive tackle is there at the same time. I mean, I think base downs should start with Godshaw and Shepard or Godshaw and Brzee. So, you can only read so much into it. But Jonah Williams was in there with the first unit next to
But that's also interesting, and something to remember too with this coaching staff is that they have no biases. It's just whoever the better players are. Like, they don't have any of that. Well, this guy's been here for this many years. Well, this guy did this last year. Well, this guy did this. Well, they're just looking at all these guys kind of just as like the same puzzle piece, and then trying to figure out which one fits best. So that is hugely beneficial for some guys who have been buried on the depth chart. Like, if you show out now to this group, there is no pre-existing biases.
Vernon Broughton, and then Colin Saunders rotated in with them after that. But I mean, there are just so many guys. I count 14 defensive tackles and defensive ends that you would normally predict to make the roster based on like their investment level or so I'll go through them here. So they add Godshaw. You think he's a lock to make the roster?
Definitely.
They kept Nathan Shepard, Colin Saunders, and Cam Jordan. They re-signed Chase Young. They have Brian Brzee. He's a lock. They have Carl Granderson. He's a lock. They add Chris Rumpf. They add Jonah Williams. They add Vernon Broughton. They draft Fadil Diggs. They still had John Ridgway and Christian Boyd and Isaiah Foskey. That's 14 guys.
Right.
Normally, the rule of thumb when I do my 53-man roster projections, and I'm always willing to tweak it here and there for a guy, but it's 10 defensive linemen, 5 linebackers, 10 DBs, and you have to like that's 25 guys on defense. And and if you decide I got to keep 6 linebackers, you got to pluck away from somewhere else. If you decide I got to keep 11 defensive linemen, you got to pluck away from somewhere else. But I count 14 guys going for 10, 11 spots. I mean, look, there's no way you can keep Devon Godshaw at nose tackle, Colin Saunders at nose tackle, and I would say Christian Boyd and John Ridgway are probably both nose tackles. You're not keeping 4 nose tackles.
Yeah, I mean, I would think Ridgway and Boyd are probably, just out of those names, probably the 2 that have the uphill battle.
And then interior linemen, Nathan Shepard, Brian Brzee, Jonah Williams. I feel pretty good about all 3 of them. So now we're up to 7. Are the other 7 all edge rushers? Cam, Foskey, Granderson,
and Young,
and Chase Young as the top 4, and then Fadil Diggs, Chris Rumpf. Vernon Broughton, another interior line. I mean, I don't see how they can keep all those interior linemen. I think it could be tough for Colin Saunders. I think it could be tough for John Ridgway. I think it could be tough for Christian Boyd.
Yep.
I think Fadil Diggs is going to have a hard time as a 7th rounder if they like Chris. They brought in Chris Rumpf, who was drafted high and played under Staley, so they personally like him. Jonah Williams, they brought him in because he fits this style. Vernon Broughton looks like a stud right away. I don't know, man. There's going to be weird cuts. I don't think Foskey's in trouble because his
good problem to have, though. Good problem to have.
Contract is still guaranteed this year. You want to try to develop a 3rd-year guy like that, but I think at least 3 or 4 of the names that we just said can't make this team.
Yeah, no, for sure. Skill-wise, Foskey can't make it, but contract-wise, he kind of has to, you know what I mean, at that point. But I think, and you hate to see it because these are the guys who are here and who are, have made contributions over the last couple of seasons, but like Ridgway, like Boyd, you hate to see it, but
it is what it is.
The fat has to be trimmed somewhere. Like you said, Chris Rumpf, they bought him in because his familiarity with the Staley defense.
Yeah.
Of course, Vernon Broughton, you just drafted him, so he's not going anywhere.
No,
So it gets very thin. So if you just had to eliminate 4, who
Well, I guess I'd say Ridgeway.
Okay.
Boy, and I won't eliminate them. They have all of training camp to prove their point. But the guys that that are like below my line and have to work their way up to get their head above the line is probably Ridgeway and Boyd,
Okay.
who I would consider the 3rd and 4th defensive nose tackles. And if one of them shines, I think it's Colin Saunders whose neck they're breathing down and trying to knock out of there. And then it's going to be tough for Fadil Diggs, I think, as a 7th-round pick. But, maybe you can get him back on the practice squad. And if I had to get rid of a 4th, where are we? We've got Foskey 4th, Rumpf 5th, and Diggs 6th at edge rusher. So I just got rid of Diggs.
And what do you think about John
Rumpf
Williams
versus Foskey for one spot, maybe?
Yeah, I was going to say maybe Rump.
Maybe.
It's tough. I mean, it's tough.
Is it?
That's what happens. So, like I said, you bring in all those guys, and you bring them in because you're kind of saying, you know what, we're just going to throw this at the wall and see what sticks.
Did you mention Jonah Williams in that?
Yeah, I feel like I want to put Jonah Williams on the team, but yeah, I mean, not if you're keeping Nathan Shepard and Vernon Broughton and Brian Brzee and Devon Godshaw and Colin Saunders. Man, this is. I guess it's a good problem to have, and the problem is they also don't have any A1 studs. There's no Chris.
Well, that's the thing. There's no real separator. It's not like on the edge. It's like, okay, Chase Young, Carl Granderson, no questions about it. Lock and load. You don't have that in the interior defensive line. It's all kind of this mismatch of who's the best, who's the second best. Like, it could be anybody. So there isn't that clear cut standout that has to be on the team.
Jones, Aaron Donald, Myles Garrett. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be a fascinating position, especially because we're still going to be learning all their roles as we go too.
Right. There is.
Yeah, we don't even know at this point, like Mike said, the rotation or what's it look like when everyone's there.
Exactly. That's the thing. You got to see who thrives in this type of environment, because we've seen for the most part, what a lot of these players look like in those other systems. But now you have to see what they look like in this 3-4. Who has that speed that was untapped before? Who has that power that was untapped before? And with a player like Foskey, who's on the roster, who has to be kind of contractually kept.
Kind of. I mean, it's not like you can afford to cut him. I mean, it's the same thing with Saunders or Shepard or whatever. Like, you paid him, so it doesn't make a lot of sense.
And you are in that time where if you're going to take a hit financially and you got to swallow a pill, take it now. Like, this is the time to do it. So if this isn't the time where you're looking at those players like, well, he's got to be on the team. Like, this is where it's like, okay, we're probably going to be below average anyways. We are trimming some of these contracts. We're getting younger. We know what we're doing here. This, if we have to, we'll do it now. And we have some money
to cut them, but yeah, they got to earn their spots. Nobody's in, like with Foskey, you don't save money by cutting him, but he's got to be one of your top 10, 11 guys, or you got to still see that developmental potential with him. You definitely do. Like I said, that 4th one, you told me to pick 4. My 4th one is I got one spot for Foskey or Rumpf. Foskey has to prove he's better than Rumpf.
True.
Has to happen. It has to happen. But let's
what
close
about you?
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Good conversation. OTAs heating up, talking a little defense. I like it. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.